A young boy is being chased and beaten by his boss, pleading for him not to hit his injured ear. The reason the boy didn't deliver the medicine as instructed was that the boss, distraught from just receiving news of his son's death, accidentally filled the capsules with poison. The boss refuses to believe the boy, snatches the medicine box from him and tastes a pill. He is immediately terrified, quickly apologizes to the boy and hugs him tightly. The boy promises to keep this a secret, saving two families from potential tragedy with his small act. The boy named George had recently saved his drowning brother, resulting in a severe cold that left him deaf in one ear. George works in a pharmacy and has always dreamt of becoming a millionaire. His father runs a bank in the town, offering loans to the poor to build homes, much to the displeasure of Potter, who profits from renting houses and wants to buy out George's father's bank. George's father refuses to sell to prevent the poor from being exploited by Potter. As George grows up, his dream is to travel the world, receiving sincere well wishes from the townspeople. On the eve of his departure, his aging father expresses his wish for George to take over the bank, which George tactfully declines, eager to explore the world beyond their town. At his brother's graduation dance, George reunites with Mary, whom he hasn't seen for years. The matured pair fall in love at first sight and dance together, even continuing after accidentally falling into a pool. After the party, while George is walking Mary home, a car arrives with news of his father's death from a heart attack, with Potter seizing the opportunity to take over the bank. This news angers everyone. George's father had always considered the poor, to the extent that there wasn't even enough money for his brother's college tuition. If Potter took over the bank, the lives of the town's poor would be unimaginable. To help the townsfolk, George decides to stay and run his father's bank, giving his travel funds to his brother for college tuition. George hopes his brother will return after graduating to run the bank, freeing him to travel the world. 4 years later, his brother graduates, gets married to a beautiful and wealthy woman who has already secured a well-paying job for him. George feels troubled, not wanting to ruin his brother's bright future, and discards his long-kept travel guides. Subsequently, he marries Mary, and as the newlyweds plan a romantic honeymoon, the bank faces a crisis. Amidst a heavy rain, everyone rushes to the bank. George, about to leave for his honeymoon, steps out of the car to investigate and learns that Potter has spread rumors about the bank's imminent collapse, causing a run as townspeople rush to withdraw their savings. The bank doesn't have enough cash on hand, and if George can't produce the money immediately, the bank will be forced to declare bankruptcy, allowing Potter to take over. Despite George's reasoning, the people insist on withdrawing their money. In the end, Mary uses their honeymoon funds to pay the townspeople, leaving only $2 after settling everything. The banking crisis is averted, but George finds that Mary has disappeared. Then he receives a call from Mary, asking him to come home after work to an address that turns out to be a dilapidated villa in town. Arriving in the pouring rain, George finds Mary has cleaned up the place. Despite the leaks, it looks somewhat like a home, complete with a makeshift barbecue grill. They embrace each other excitedly. With George's help, more and more poor townspeople are getting new homes, while they continue to live in a rundown house and drive an old car. George's bank increasingly affects Potter's interests. Potter offers George a job with a salary of $20,000 a year, which could give George a comfortable life and fulfill his dream of traveling the world. The offer is more than 10 times George's current income. Suspecting Potter's intentions, George immediately refuses. Though he declines, it reminds George of his unfulfilled dreams. He asks his wife why she married him instead of other successful young men in town. She replies that she didn't want anyone else, hoping her children would resemble him. They have 4 adorable children. The old villa under Mary's care becomes a real home, though their financial situation doesn't improve much. Then World War II breaks out, many join the fight, and Potter makes a fortune from recruiting soldiers. George's brother becomes a war hero. George wants to contribute but can't due to his deafness and serves as an air raid warden instead. His brother receives a Medal of Honor from the president. Meanwhile, an uncle accidentally includes $8,000 with a newspaper he gives to Potter, who secretly keeps it. Without the $8,000, not only would their bank face bankruptcy, but they could also end up in jail. George is furious. Returning home, he finds his family decorating the Christmas tree, but he's preoccupied with his troubles. He envies others for their possessions and wonders why, despite his good deeds, he must live in such a dilapidated villa. His child falls ill, and when the child's teacher calls to express concern, George harshly rebukes her. His wife tries to apologize, but the teacher has already hung up. After lashing out at his child, George angrily overturns things in the house, leaving his wife and children shocked and confused. After apologizing, George leaves and seeks help from Potter, who cruelly suggests that someone with nothing to his name might as well be dead. George stumbles to a bridge, contemplating suicide. Just as he's about to jump, an old man beats him to it. George forgets his suicidal thoughts and jumps in to save the man. After rescuing the old man, he claims to be an angel from heaven, which George initially takes as a joke. George asks the supposed angel about his wings. The old man explains he's a second-class angel without wings. George, desperate for help, asks for $8,000, but the angel apologizes, saying they don't use money in heaven. George, regardless of the angel's authenticity, begins to share his troubles with the old man. George feels like a failure, thinking his wife, children, and friends might have had better lives if he had never existed. To help George find the courage to live, the old man decides to show him a world where he never existed. They visit the town and see its transformation. Without George to intervene, the pharmacy owner, after losing his son and mistakenly giving out poison, spends 20 years in jail and becomes a homeless beggar upon release. Without George's help for the poor, the town under Potter's control turns into a place of vice and superficial extravagance. George's father's bank has closed down due to George's absence. George's brother dies at age 9, falling through ice because George wasn't there to save him. Consequently, Many soldiers who would have been saved by his brother in the war die. Without George, Mary remains unmarried her whole life. When George tries to approach Mary, he is mistaken for a troublemaker and shot at by police. George desperately runs to the bridge, pleading with the old man for another chance to live, regardless of the circumstances. After his prayer, it starts to snow again, indicating a return to his original world. A police officer approaches, looking for him, as the townspeople have been searching for George. He excitedly runs home, greeting everyone on the way.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, movie home! Merry Christmas, Emporium!
George even wishes Potter a Merry Christmas outside his window. Upon returning home, he is still faced with arrest but greets everyone with excitement. His children welcome him, and he embraces them joyfully. Soon his wife returns, and they all celebrate together as his uncle brings a basket full of money. After noticing George's unusual behavior, his wife learns the truth through the uncle and mobilizes the town's residents to donate money. Everyone George has helped contributes, leading to a long queue of donors at his house. A wealthy friend from New York sends $25,000, and his brother in military uniform rushes back home. George becomes the wealthiest man in town as everyone sings to celebrate Christmas. George realizes that regardless of what one loses, having friends and family is the greatest wealth. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.